They told her to calm down, to stop resisting, to act like a good citizen. But when a child can't breathe and a mother's scream shatters the stillness of a neon-lit night, you learn that some uniforms protect power, not people. What the officers didn't know, what they never imagined, was that her brother wasn't just another black man with a badge. He was the one writing the rules now, and he was already on his way. Naomi Keller hadn't planned to stop that night, not after 12 hours in the ER, not with her spine aching, not with the ghost of dried blood still clinging to her sleeve, not with her eyes half closing at every red light. She had counted on making it home, collapsing into bed next to her son, and pretending for just a few hours that exhaustion didn't sit on her chest like a second heartbeat. But the gas light blinked on, orange and insistent. She muttered under her breath, signaling off the freeway toward a Shell station glowing dully in the dark. It looked half-lit, half-forgotten, its buzzing lights stammering under the weight of desert air. The kind of place that whispered, "Don't linger," even before you open the door. But Naomi knew how to listen to her body more than to bad omens. Her body wanted fuel, both hers and the car's. She pulled up to pump 7 and let the engine die. In the back seat, 10-year-old Micah Keller remained curled around his tablet like a house cat, hoodie bunched around his elbows. The pale blue screen illuminated the edges of his cheeks. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. This routine was as practiced as breathing, especially for a boy who never took breathing for granted. Naomi turned slightly, tapped the glass with 2 fingers. 2 minutes. You good? Micah's eyes flicked up. Yup, doing vocabulary. Consequence. It means something that happens after. She smiled faintly, lips barely curving. Perfect. Lock the door. Click. Naomi opened the driver's door and stepped out, her joints slow to comply. Her scrub pants clung to the backs of her knees, still damp from a spilled saline bag during shift change. The wind caught the edge of her ID badge, Naomi Keller, RN, and flipped it over her chest like a name tag with a memory. The nozzle clicked in place. She punched the code in by habit. Zip, enter, grade, begin. She stood in place as the pump began to hum. Her gaze wandered across the lot, vacant but not peaceful. The lights cast long shadows that didn't belong to anything real. A cardboard sign taped to the store window caught her eye. Security cameras out of service, under maintenance. Of course, a sound behind her made her spine stiffen. Not loud, just deliberate. 2 car doors opening, slow, measured. She turned her head slightly. A black and white cruiser had pulled up by the air machine. 2 officers sat inside, doors now ajar. One sipped from a cup. The other rested his hand casually, too casually, near his waist. Naomi's hands tightened on the pump handle. She turned back to the blinking digits. 628, 754, 801. Inside the car, Micah had paused his app. Something had shifted. He couldn't name it, but his body felt it. The kind of tension that creeps in like a cold draft under the door. His mother wasn't moving like she usually did. She was too still. Micah didn't speak. He reached into his lap and placed the inhaler on top of his tablet, just in case. Back outside, Naomi stared straight ahead. She didn't need to glance again to know the officers were now standing. Not walking, just standing. Watching. Calculating. She straightened, shoulders back, chin up. A movement so practiced, it had become armor. The nozzle clicked. Tank full. She replaced it. Shut the fuel cap, exhaled slowly. Evening, ma'am. The voice came from behind her. Male, flat, no warmth. She turned only slightly. Evening, she replied, polite but not open. Her eyes didn't invite questions. The taller officer, broad jaw, sun-reddened neck, gestured toward her car. That your vehicle? Naomi didn't flinch. Yes, bought it last month. Pretty nice ride, the second one said, younger, buzz cut, cracking his knuckles. Custom wheels. You sure it's yours? A slow breath. Naomi reached into her scrub pocket, pulled out her wallet. Registration, insurance, license. It's all current. Neither took the documents. Instead, the older one let his eyes wander. From her shoes to the badge, to her face. Not a glance, an inventory. You work at River Hill General? I do. Night shift. Huh? The younger one said, tilting his head. Don't look like someone who drives a car like that. Naomi said nothing. She'd heard this before. She knew the script, and she knew it never ended when you stayed quiet. You sure this car's yours? The question came again, slower this time, like a challenge more than a curiosity. Naomi didn't flinch. Yes, it's registered to my name. You can run the plates. The taller officer, he hadn't introduced himself, hadn't even offered a badge number, just smiled, slow and crooked. The kind of smile that wasn't about friendliness, but control. He took a step closer, shoes scraping softly against the pavement. You got keys in hand, badge on chest. Nice little story about being a nurse, he said. But see, thing is, nice cars like that, they get reported stolen all the time, especially in this neighborhood. Naomi's jaw tensed. Her voice remained even. I'm not telling you a story. I'm giving you facts. I just got off a 12-hour shift at River Hill General. The younger officer, leaner, arms crossed, face unreadable, circled around the back of her car. License plate's clean, he called out, not too loud. But maybe she's got something in the trunk. Naomi instinctively shifted her weight, body angling slightly to block access. There's nothing in my trunk but a blanket, jumper cables, and a box of PPE I never unpacked. Oh yeah? The older one said, now directly in front of her. You mind if we take a look? I do, Naomi said, unless you have probable cause or a warrant. His eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't like that. You know your rights, he said, with a tight grin. You a lawyer too? I'm a nurse, she replied, which means I've seen what happens when people like you push too far and hope no one's recording. She regretted it the second it left her mouth. His smile disappeared. Excuse me? Naomi swallowed. Her hands remained steady. Her heart did not. I'd like my ID back, she said. I've given you everything you asked for. I'm not under arrest. I haven't committed a crime. I'd like to leave. The younger officer had made his way to the passenger side, now leaning down to peer into the window. Inside, Micah sat still, frozen, his eyes locked onto the man's face. The boy's hands rested near his lap, close to the inhaler, but not touching it. Yet. Got a kid in there? The younger one asked. He look a little older than 10. He's 10, Naomi said, her tone clipped. And you're scaring him. The taller officer still hadn't moved. His hand was now resting on his utility belt. Not on the holster, but close. Deliberately close. That him in the back? The younger one said louder, tapping the glass with one knuckle. Hey, buddy, you okay in there? Micah didn't respond. He didn't blink, but his hand had quietly slid over the phone in his hoodie pocket. He had it open. Thumb hovered over the screen. Back outside, Naomi's posture hadn't changed, but her pulse thundered beneath her skin. I'd prefer you didn't engage with my son, she said more firmly now. We're done here. She reached for her ID still dangling from the officer's hand. He didn't let go. You're starting to sound defensive, he said, voice lowering. Why's that? I'm tired, Naomi said. I'm a mother and I want to go home. Maybe you're tired because you've been running something you don't want us to find, the younger one said, still near the window. She didn't answer. That's when she saw it. A single sheet of paper taped to the gas station window, flapping once in the breeze. Security cameras temporarily out of order. Under maintenance. And just like that, the last thread snapped. Her stomach dropped. She glanced toward her son. He was watching. His little chest was rising too fast. Micah, she said calmly, too calmly. Are you okay? He nodded once. A lie. Naomi stepped backward, instinct tightening every muscle in her legs. The older officer moved first, stepping directly into her path. You going somewhere? I'd like to call my brother, she said. The younger one laughed. Go ahead. Call the mayor. Hell, call the president. She pulled her phone from her pocket, fingers shaking. The taller officer knocked it from her hand in one smooth motion. It skidded across the pavement, landing by the rear tire. That's my property, she began. He shoved her hard, one palm against her shoulder, slamming her into the car. Do not raise your voice to me, he snapped. The younger officer came around, grabbing her arm, twisting it sharply behind her back. Stop resisting, He barked, though she hadn't moved. Inside the car, Micah fumbled the phone out of his pocket and hit send. The message went out. "Mom in trouble. Station off 48. Come now." Then he tapped record. The red light blinked beneath the fabric of his hoodie. Naomi gritted her teeth, face pressed against the cold metal of her own car. "My son is watching," she gasped. "That little punk?" The younger one sneered. "He's faking, just trying to get us off your back." Micah's fingers shook. He grabbed the inhaler, brought it to his lips, but couldn't press it down. The air had gotten thinner. His chest rattled. His vision blurred. He opened his mouth. "Mom," he whispered, barely audible. "I can't," Naomi screamed. "He's having an asthma attack. He needs his inhaler." The older officer spun around, yanked open the back door, and slapped the inhaler from Micah's hand. "He ain't dying," he growled. "He's performing." Micah curled forward, gasping. A dry, rasping sound escaped him. Naomi broke loose for one breathless second, lunged, grabbed the inhaler from the floor, shoved it into Micah's hands. "Baby, now!" "Press down. Press it now." The younger officer wrenched her back again. "You just earned yourself a resisting charge." "You're hurting her," Micah croaked. The taller one slammed the door. "You both think you're untouchable tonight." Naomi's voice was hoarse but clear. "No," she said, "but my brother is." The message went out in silence. 3 words, 16 characters. Mom in trouble. Micah didn't know if it had sent. He didn't know if the signal was strong enough, if the battery would hold, if anyone would see it in time, but he pressed send anyway, and then he hit record. The red light blinked beneath the folds of his hoodie, blinking like a pulse. Outside the car, Naomi's cheek was pressed against cold metal. Her wrist was twisted behind her, her shoulder pinned by a hand too used to force and too quick to justify it. She gasped, but not from pain. From fear. Not for herself, for Micah. She couldn't see him now. The door had slammed shut. The glass had turned into a barrier. But she knew her son. She knew the sound of his breathing. And she could hear the way it rattled. Her voice broke. "Let me help him. He can't breathe." "Maybe next time you'll cooperate," one of them said. The red light kept blinking. Inside the car, Micah blinked through tears he refused to let fall. His throat burned. His chest rose and fell like it was fighting itself. But he didn't stop recording. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He waited. The phone was still in his lap, screen dim now. But the text had been sent to only one person. Uncle D. Damian Keller was still awake. Across the city, in a quiet house where the hallways were too clean and the lights never fully dimmed, a phone buzzed on a granite countertop. He almost didn't hear it. He'd been working, reviewing city budget drafts, public safety updates, and a speech he didn't want to give. The usual things mayors lose sleep over. But the buzz came again, and something about the hour, something about the name on the screen, Micah, made him freeze. He picked it up, read the message, then read it again. Then his eyes shifted to the timestamp. 67 seconds ago. He didn't speak, didn't grab a coat, didn't alert his security detail. He grabbed his keys and ran. Back at the station, the officers were growing more confident. The older one was talking again, something about teaching a lesson, about not disrespecting the badge. The younger one was circling the car like a vulture, muttering to himself about ungrateful people. Neither noticed the headlights. Not at first. They came from a distance, far down the road. Fast. Too fast for a normal car. Too direct for someone getting gas. Naomi heard it before they did. The low rising whine of tires on slick pavement. Then brakes, screeching, hard, loud. Her head lifted, her breath caught. A black SUV slid into the station, stopping just feet from the cruiser. Doors didn't slam. Voices didn't shout. But everything stopped moving. The officers turned, startled, reached instinctively for their belts. And then he stepped out. Damian Keller, tailored black suit, no tie, jaw clenched. He didn't walk. He advanced. Each step deliberate, heavy with meaning. His presence cut through the drizzle like a blade. Naomi couldn't speak. Her throat closed, her wrist still in someone else's grip. But Micah saw him. Through the fogged window, his eyes widened. The phone still recording. Damian reached the group without a word. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pull rank. He just lifted his hand. A leather badge case flipped open. The gold emblem inside caught the light and reflected directly into the officer's eyes. "Mayor Damian Keller," he said, voice low but clear, "remove your hands from my sister." Silence dropped like a gavel. The older officer's fingers loosened. The younger one stepped back. Naomi stumbled slightly, but Damian caught her, just one hand on her shoulder, gentle but unshakable. "She was resisting," one of them muttered. Damian turned his gaze slow and exact. "No," he said. "What she was doing was surviving. What you were doing was violating damn near every policy in the book." They didn't reply. "Is that your cruiser?" he asked. The older one nodded. "Then stay near it, hands visible. Do not speak." Just then, another sound. Sirens, but faint. Then blue lights. Then uniforms. 2 marked units from River Hill's Central Precinct pulled in, lights spinning silently. Their arrival was not a coincidence, not an accident. Dispatch had received the same ping Micah sent. Damian had made one call during the drive. That was all it took. Doors opened. 2 officers emerged, one sergeant, one patrol. No confusion in their eyes, no hesitation. Damian turned to them. "These 2 are to be disarmed and placed under administrative custody. Right here, right now." The sergeant nodded. "Yes, sir." "You can't be serious," the older officer barked, spinning toward the new arrivals. "You're taking his word for it?" "He's family and a federal official," the sergeant said, "and you are not above protocol." They hesitated, but when 2 younger officers approached with latex gloves on, the belts came off. No more protests. Naomi leaned against the SUV, breathing hard. Damian stood beside her. Inside the car, Micah slumped forward, finally able to breathe. The red light was still blinking. For the first time that night, Naomi could breathe. Not easily, not fully. But the weight on her chest had shifted, dislodged by the sound of sirens, the shine of a badge, and the presence of someone who knew how to make people listen without raising his voice. Damian stood beside her, hand still on her shoulder, as the officers were quietly disarmed. One of them, Holloway, shook his head in disbelief as he unstrapped his utility belt and slammed it onto the hood of his cruiser. "You're throwing us under the damn bus," he muttered, "over some woman getting loud and her fake-ass asthma kid." A nearby officer winced. No one responded, because no one believed him anymore. Naomi didn't even look his way. She had nothing left to say to men like that. Her attention was on Micah. He was slumped in the back seat, face pale, chest still rising unevenly, but he was breathing. That was all she needed in that moment, to see his eyes half open, fingers clutching the inhaler like it was a lifeline. The ambulance arrived less than a minute later. It didn't blast in with sirens. It didn't need to. It rolled in quietly, escorted by one of the newly arrived patrol units. 2 medics jumped out, moving fast but steady. "He's in the back," Naomi said hoarsely, pointing to the car. "He's 10. Asthmatic. Had an attack during all of this." She didn't say because of them. She didn't have to. The silence said it for her. One medic opened the back door gently, kneeling beside Micah. The other turned to Naomi. "Are you injured, ma'am?" Naomi hesitated. Her wrist throbbed. Her shoulder ached. Her jaw was clenched so tight she hadn't noticed the tension until it began to release. "Yes," she said finally, "but I'm okay." Damian stepped closer. "She's not going alone. I'm riding with them." The medic nodded. "That's fine, sir." A stretcher was lowered. Naomi touched Micah's curls as they lifted him out. He didn't cry, didn't speak. But when she leaned in, he whispered, "You came." She kissed his forehead. "You called." And that was all they needed. As the medics loaded Micah into the back of the ambulance, a small crowd began to form, drawn by flashing lights, by the sounds that had faded but left their mark. People with phones, people asking questions. "What happened? Is that the mayor? Was that kid okay?" Damian turned toward the murmurs but didn't speak to them. Not yet. His priority was inside that ambulance. He helped Naomi climb in, then turned back to the sergeant in charge. "Secure the scene. Hold both officers on site until internal affairs arrives." The sergeant nodded without question. "Yes, sir." and confiscate the cruiser dashcam footage. Pull from any store camera in a 2-block radius. Even if they're broken, check anyway. The sergeant cracked a faint smile. Understood. Damien climbed into the ambulance last. As the doors closed behind him, the scene outside changed. Naomi didn't see it, but the officers did. Cameras, flashing phones, neighbors emerging from apartments nearby, a teenager going live on Instagram, and worst of all, a local reporter. Notebook already out, phone pressed to her ear. Inside the ambulance, Naomi gripped her son's hand. Her skin was clammy, her voice low. He's gonna be okay, right? The medic gave a reassuring nod. Pulse is steady, breathing's evening out. He's going to be okay. Naomi exhaled, then turned toward Damien. Why were you still awake? She asked quietly. He gave a tired smile. City budget nightmares. But Micah's text came through like a jolt. He recorded it, Naomi said. I think the whole thing. It's still on his phone. Damien nodded slowly. Good. We may need it. The ambulance rolled forward. Back at the station, Holloway was pacing now. Doyle sat on the curb, head in his hands. A second squad car had arrived to stand watch. Reporters were being kept behind a makeshift line of cones, but the damage was already done. One of the bystanders had uploaded part of the footage. The video, Naomi screaming, the inhaler slapped away, Micah's gasping breath was spreading like wildfire. When the press conference came, it wasn't held under the dome of City Hall. Damien chose a smaller media room. No flags, no grand stage, just beige walls, a single mic, and truth. Naomi sat beside him, wrist in a brace, eyes clear but cold. Micah, wrapped in a hospital blanket, leaned against her side, still but alert. Behind them, a screen played part of the footage. No narration, no edits, just proof. I know many of you have questions, Damien began, but the footage you've seen is not an isolated incident. It is the result of a system that protects itself instead of the people it serves. He turned to Naomi, who didn't flinch. This woman is not just my sister. She is a nurse, a mother, a citizen. And what happened to her, what happened to her son, is unacceptable. The room was quiet, not from shock, from agreement. Outside, the city buzzed, but not with chaos, with change. The courtroom wasn't quiet. It wasn't loud either, but there was a pulse in the air, a collective tension, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Reporters filled the back rows. Community members lined the aisles. Naomi sat beside her attorney, back straight, fingers folded tightly in her lap. Micah sat next to her, dressed in a white button-up shirt and black shoes that made him look smaller and older all at once. His lips were tight, but his chin didn't tremble. Not anymore. They weren't here to ask for sympathy. They were here for the truth. At the front of the room, Officers Holloway and Doyle sat side by side in ill-fitting suits. Neither wore a badge. Neither would again. When the judge entered, the gallery stood. When she spoke, her voice echoed off every wall. This court is convened to hear testimony and review evidence related to charges of excessive force, unlawful detainment, child endangerment, and obstruction of justice. No one blinked. The prosecution began with evidence. Timestamps, location data, police logs, service records. Then came the video. The lights dimmed slightly. On screen, Naomi's voice, calm but firm. Then confrontational voices. Then the moment everything turned. The slap of a phone. The shove. A gasp. Micah's faint, wheezing voice. I can't. The gallery went still. Then came the image, grainy but unmistakable, of Holloway reaching into the car and slapping the inhaler from the boy's hands. A dry, broken sound followed. Micah's body curled in on itself. And finally, Naomi's scream. The screen froze. The prosecutor turned to the jury. That footage was captured on a smartphone by a 10-year-old. The dash cam footage was conveniently corrupted. The store's cameras were out of order. But this boy, he recorded it anyway, because he thought no one would believe them. Then she nodded toward Micah. All of this, because his mother got gas while black. Holloway's lawyer objected. Overruled. The prosecution rested. Naomi was called first. She took the stand in silence, swore the oath, sat. Mrs. Keller, can you describe what you felt when the officers approached you that night? Her voice was measured, clear, tired, suspicious. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I knew how these things can go. I've seen it. I've treated it. What do you mean? I've cleaned bruises left by batons, reset fingers crushed in handcuffs. I've watched mothers come into the ER after encounters like this, praying their kids would still be breathing. And your own son? She turned slightly, eyes on Micah. My son has asthma. Stress is a trigger. Fear is a trigger. Having a man with a gun slap his inhaler away while he's gasping for air, that wasn't just excessive. That was cruel. The courtroom held still. Even the pen stopped scribbling. On cross-examination, Holloway's lawyer tried to twist the facts. You raised your voice. You reached for your phone. Wouldn't you say that created tension? Naomi didn't blink. No, I'd say it documented it. You refused to open your trunk. Why? Because I knew my rights. And you didn't comply. I didn't submit, she corrected. There's a difference. Micah was called next. He walked slowly to the stand, clutching his inhaler like a talisman. When he sat, his feet barely touched the floor. Do you understand why you're here, Micah? Yes. Do you know the difference between telling the truth and a lie? Yes. Can you tell us what happened that night? He spoke quietly but steadily. They scared my mom. She was tired. They didn't believe her. They didn't believe the car was hers. What did you do? I texted my uncle. I pressed record. I hid my phone. Why? Because I thought they were going to hurt her. Did you think anyone would help? Micah hesitated. No, but I hoped. The gallery blinked. Many didn't realize they were holding their breath. On cross, the defense tried a different angle. You've had asthma your whole life? Yes. So you're used to attacks. No one's used to not breathing. You could have exaggerated how bad it was, though, right? Micah stared. I almost passed out. The defense lawyer faltered. No more questions. The defense rested 2 hours later. Their angle was misunderstanding, that the officers had reason to be suspicious, that Naomi was combative, that the child panicked and escalated things. But the jury had seen the footage, heard the tape, watched a 10-year-old record his own trauma because he didn't trust the badge outside his window, and they believed him. When the jury returned, there was no hesitation. Guilty, on all counts. The judge's voice rang clear. This court finds officers Brent Holloway and Evan Doyle guilty of excessive force, child endangerment, and abuse of authority under color of law. You are hereby stripped of all law enforcement credentials and remanded into custody pending sentencing. The room didn't cheer. It didn't need to. Micah reached for his mother's hand. She gripped it tight. Damien was waiting outside, not as the mayor, as her brother. As they stepped into the hallway, a sea of people parted, not for celebrity, not for spectacle, but for reverence. Someone asked Naomi if she had anything to say. She looked down at her son, then at the camera. I'm not brave, she said. I'm a mother, and my son did what this country keeps asking our kids to do. Record it, survive it, prove it. She paused. But he shouldn't have had to. Some stories end with a gavel strike. Naomi's didn't. Hers lingered, long after the courtroom emptied, long after the headlines faded. The city didn't erupt. It adjusted. At River Hill General, Naomi returned to the night shift 2 weeks later. Her wrist was still stiff, her voice still cracked at times, but her hands knew what to do. The ER didn't slow down for trauma, neither did she. But something had changed. The stairs were different now, softer. A few nurses hugged her without asking. A janitor left her a cup of coffee with a sticky note. You made space for the rest of us. She didn't cry when she read it, but she stood still longer than she meant to. Micah went back to school the same week. His classmates didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. They had seen the video, or heard the whispers, or watched the grown-ups go quiet when he walked in. Some kids said he was a hero. Micah just shrugged. He didn't want to be brave. He wanted to breathe. But when asked what he wanted to be when he grew up, he no longer said astronaut or rapper. He said, "Oh, doctor." But I'll remember what I saw. His teacher later told Naomi that he started helping younger students during recess, kids who were anxious or didn't like noise or needed space. He'd sit with them, sometimes in silence. Sometimes that was enough. The footage kept circulating. Clips were used in a civil liberties panel at the local university. A law professor built a training seminar around it for officers in training. The mayor's office launched a new initiative, Community Presence Without Force, a policy aimed at de-escalation led by women, medics, teachers, and parents. Damien never once brought up what happened during interviews, but he also never denied it. When asked about his toughest moment in office, he simply said, "The night I showed up wasn't the hard part. The hard part was knowing I almost didn't." Holloway and Doyle were sentenced 3 months later, 2 years each. It wasn't enough for some, it was too much for others. For Naomi, it was just a fact, a line in the story. The real justice for her wasn't time served. It was the absence of fear when she reached for her keys at night. It was Micah sleeping through a thunderstorm again. It was breathing without looking over her shoulder. She never spoke to the press again, didn't sell her story, didn't write a book. But one night, while treating a patient, an older black woman with high blood pressure, Naomi reached to adjust the IV. The woman looked at her for a long moment, then whispered, "You made it easier for the next nurse who looks like you." Naomi didn't answer, just nodded once. Outside the hospital, spring settled into Riverhill. The gas station where it all began changed owners. A new camera was installed, real this time. Signs were updated. The broken one was taken down. But Naomi never stopped at Pump 7 again. Damien visited less frequently. Politics crept back in. But when he saw his sister across the room at family dinners, or watched Micah quietly crush his spelling test with that same calm fire in his eyes, he remembered. He never missed their calls again. And Micah, he stopped carrying the inhaler in his hoodie pocket, started keeping it in his backpack instead. It was a small shift, but sometimes that's how echoes fade, not with silence, but with breath. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story. What did you feel while listening? Were you angry, moved, hopeful, or all at once? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and help us keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next story.